He was only 15 when the world stopped to look at him. A boy with golden hair, porcelain skin, and a gaze that seemed to carry both innocence and tragedy. Overnight, Björn Andrésen became the most beautiful boy in the world, a title that would follow him for the rest of his life. But behind the perfection the cameras captured was a teenager who never asked to be worshipped, never understood the cost of being seen as flawless. This is not just the story of beauty, it's the story of what beauty can destroy. Because when the lights faded and the headlines moved on, the boy left behind had to face the silence of a world that only loved him for his reflection. Today, as the world mourns his passing, we revisit the life behind the legend, the child who became a symbol, the man who struggled to be seen as human again. His story forces us to ask, what happens when the world's praise becomes your prison? If you're watching this, take a moment, like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far his story still travels. He was 15 when destiny walked into a casting call in Stockholm. Luchino Visconti, the Italian filmmaker behind Death in Venice, had searched across Europe for a boy who could embody beauty itself, something ethereal, timeless, almost otherworldly. When Björn Andrésen entered the room, the search ended. He didn't speak much English, barely understood the magnitude of what was happening, but his face said everything the camera needed. Soon, he would be on a plane to Venice, transformed from a quiet Swedish teenager into Tadzio, the angelic boy whose silent presence would haunt world cinema forever. At the film's premiere in 1971, the press crowned him the most beautiful boy in the world. For the world, it was a poetic title. For Björn, it became a burden he never asked for, one that would define every chapter of his life. That day marked the beginning of both his fame and his loss of self. After Death in Venice premiered, Björn Andrésen was thrust into a kind of fame no 15-year-old could possibly understand. Overnight, he became an international sensation, the face of an ideal so flawless that it was almost inhuman. Fashion photographers, film studios, and talk shows wanted a piece of him. He was flown across continents, adored in Japan where he was treated like a living doll, and adored by millions who never truly saw him as a person. Everywhere he went, cameras followed. Reporters didn't ask about his dreams or his craft, they asked him to turn, to smile, to recreate beauty as if it were a command. He once said, "I felt like an exotic animal in a cage," and behind that simple statement was a truth few knew, that he was trapped in an image the world refused to let him outgrow. As the years passed, that image became both his blessing and his curse. Directors only wanted him for his looks, not his potential. His youth and fragility were packaged, sold, and consumed. The industry's obsession with his angelic appearance made him the subject of uncomfortable attention, often from adults who blurred the line between admiration and exploitation. In interviews, he spoke with quiet discomfort about how he was never asked if he wanted this, how fame had been handed to him like a costume he couldn't take off. Even the smallest acts of rebellion, growing older, changing his look, felt like crimes against the myth people built around him. Björn's story in these years wasn't one of glamour, but of silent erosion. He had the world's eyes on him but no one truly listening. The label, the most beautiful boy in the world, became a prison sentence, one that followed him through adolescence, stunted his identity, and hollowed out the joy of creation. What the world saw as a gift, he experienced as a slow theft of self. Yet through it all, he tried to hold on, to find meaning beyond the mirror. As the lights dimmed on his teenage fame, Björn Andrésen was left to face the quiet aftermath of being remembered for something he could never outgrow. He continued to act, appearing in Swedish films and theater productions, but the shadow of Tadzio lingered everywhere he went. Casting directors saw the same face, the same mythic boy, even as he aged and tried to redefine himself. Decades later, the 2021 documentary The Most Beautiful Boy in the World reopened those wounds, giving Björn the chance to finally speak his truth. In it, he reflected on how fame had stolen the innocence of his youth, how a single role had built a pedestal so high it isolated him for life. It wasn't bitterness that filled his words, but a quiet ache, the kind that only comes from being seen by everyone, yet truly known by no one. Behind the image was a life marked by tragedy and silent battles. Björn lost his mother to suicide when he was just 10 years old, a trauma that shaped his emotional world long before Hollywood ever did. He carried that loss with him, and as his fame faded, depression and alcohol became his way of coping with a loneliness few could imagine. The press once described him as the boy who never grew up, but they didn't see the man who was trying to heal the child within. The world still expected a vision of beauty, but what he longed for was normalcy, the ability to walk into a room and not be haunted by his own reflection on screen. In his later years, Björn sought peace in simplicity. He spoke openly about his pain, turning it into wisdom for others trapped by image and expectation. Watching him then, older, slower, yet more grounded, was like watching a long-held storm finally quiet down. The boy who once embodied perfection had grown into a man who understood imperfection as truth. His story reminds us that fame doesn't preserve youth, it often devours it. Like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from as we continue to honor his legacy. On October 25, 2025, the world received the quiet, heartbreaking news that Björn Andrésen, once hailed as the most beautiful boy in the world, had passed away at the age of 70. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe, not just from film historians or admirers of death in Venice, but from ordinary people who felt connected to the haunting fragility he carried throughout his life. His death reopened old conversations, not only about beauty and fame, but about the lasting scars left by the spotlight. For some, it was a farewell to an icon of art and youth. For others, it was a moment to reckon with how society consumes beauty without understanding the soul beneath it. His story, once frozen in the frame of a film, now felt like a mirror held up to the world that both made and misunderstood him. In the days following his passing, interest in his life surged once more. Old interviews resurfaced, Björn speaking with candor about how the title that once made him famous also robbed him of peace. Directors and critics reflected on death in Venice not as a tale of beauty, but as a cautionary work that blurred lines between admiration and exploitation. The documentary he participated in during his later years, The Most Beautiful Boy in the World, 2021, gained renewed attention, as audiences saw not just the face that mesmerized the world, but the man who spent decades trying to reclaim his identity from it. Through his own words and quiet wisdom, Björn helped redefine what beauty truly meant, not perfection, but endurance, honesty, and survival. His legacy now extends far beyond cinema. In every discussion about child stardom, exploitation, and the cost of aesthetic obsession, his name stands as both a warning and a symbol of resilience. To younger actors, he remains a lesson in how quickly innocence can be commodified, and how hard it is to take back control once the world decides who you are. But there was grace in how Björn lived his final years, grounded, reflective, and free from resentment. He will forever be remembered not only for the angelic face that stunned audiences in 1971, but for the humanity he found after the applause faded, proof that beauty, though fleeting, can still leave an immortal echo. He changed the way the world saw beauty, but more importantly, he changed the way it understood its consequences. Younger generations now see his story as both warning and inspiration, a life lived between light and shadow, youth and truth. His death may have closed a chapter, but his humanity ensures he will never fade. If you found this story moving, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this to light.